So this is a pretty interesting story here. The United States and Poland, and I guess NATO a little bit too, but it seems more like it's just U.S. and Poland. They are discussing sending fighter jets to Ukraine. And so Antony Blinken, who's the U.S. Secretary of State, of course, he says that Poland sending fighter jets to Ukraine gets a green light from the United States. Now, this is very interesting, and I'll explain why. So it's his quote is, "That gets the green light. In fact, we're talking with our Polish friends right now, but what we might be able to backfill their needs if, in fact, they choose to provide these fighter jets to the Ukrainians. What can we do? How can we help to make sure that they get something to backfill the planes that they're handing over to the Ukrainians?" And he's actually in Moldova, and Moldova, shares a border with Ukraine, and they're not part of NATO. So honestly, they're probably next, if and when Ukraine is taken over. Like Moldova is probably next. I mean, they'd get completely bulldozed, and they're not part of NATO, of course. So here's something interesting. So there's this conversation about sending these fighter jets. Now I was interested because I was wondering if Ukraine even has an air force. It appears that they do, but there was a U.S. report that just came out saying that there's still Ukrainian fighter jets, flying and stuff like that. So I don't know if they just need more fighter jets, maybe. But I saw also that they are considering sending Soviet era fighter jets instead of new modern fighter jets, because this is the thing, right? Um, this is one of the big issues that came up in the U.S.'s attempt at setting up a regime in Afghanistan, was that it's really hard to man all of this new equipment. You have to learn a lot. It takes a lot of brain power and a lot of teaching and a lot of comprehension to actually be able to man this weaponry. Fighter jets, like some of these tanks and stuff like that, trucks. A lot of these take a lot of work just to be able to be used. And so what they're doing, instead of giving modern equipment that these, I guess Ukrainian fighters who are coming in new wouldn't be able to understand, they are actually going to give them Soviet era planes that I presume are easier to use. I guess Poland still uses Soviet era fighter jets, actually. I guess they don't even have the modern ones. They just have the Soviet era ones. But it actually appears that Poland is afraid of sending it, and it doesn't look like Poland is going to send them, because it seems like both the President Duda and the Prime Minister, I don't know if I'm getting them mixed up, Morawiecki, are basically saying like, no, we're not sending fighter jets. So Poland has been doing a lot in terms of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, but they haven't really. I don't think I've really seen much military support. It seems like humanitarian aid. That's what they seem to be making clear. I guess they don't want to get into the conflict unilaterally, because if they do so, I guess Russia might attack them. But at the same time, if they do that, I mean, they're part of NATO, and so that would trigger Article 5, and all of the NATO states would be there to assist. And honestly, like, if Poland gets attacked by Russia, that's straight up World War III. I would say, honestly, even if Poland wasn't part of NATO, like, invading Poland would likely be World War III, even without their NATO membership, because invading Poland would be an indication that you have greater goals of expanding throughout the world and creating like a world war, essentially. And we saw that in World War II. Obviously, Poland was literally the start of World War II. And so even without that, and so obviously Poland is a mid-tier nation, and so they are definitely like a solid country, solid economy, but they're not in the tier of like a France or United States. They're a middle-tier country, and so they're not in the top tier, obviously, but they're in the middle tier. They're in the middle tier. But they don't seem to be down to send in these fighter jets because they don't want to get into the conflict with Russia. Now, does that exactly make sense? I'm not sure, because if they do get attacked by Russia, my understanding is Article 5 would be triggered. So Russia's not going to do that. So I don't really know. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like they're going to do it, but they're going to send fighter jets potentially, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Ukraine apparently still has some fighter jets, and obviously an air force helps significantly with being able to bomb convoys and just enemies in general, and that kind of thing. So is Poland going to send them? I'm not 100% sure, but they don't seem to want to directly get into an armed conflict with Russia, and they would be donating the fighter jets as a sovereign nation rather than it being a NATO move. But my understanding is even if that happens and they get attacked by Russia, I think Article 5 gets triggered. But if I'm wrong about that, definitely let me know down below.